Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with my spoiler-free review for The Beholder by Anna Bright. I won this advanced reader's copy in a giveaway on Twitter from the author, so thank you so much. I was so excited to get to read this early. You guys might remember that this was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, so let's get into talking about it. So before I get into the actual review portion of this video, I want to talk about a couple of things I think it's important to know going in. And the first one is, I think when this book was originally blurbed or like publicized, it was described as a gender-swapped Odyssey retelling, and I don't think that's true. This really doesn't feel like a retelling. There is kind of that journey aspect, and there are some similarities in like some of the characters or like the adventures, I guess, that they have along the way, but this is absolutely not a retelling, so I don't think you should go in expecting that. Another thing that I think it's good to know about this book before you start is that the genre of this one is kind of complicated to me, because although this is a fantasy book, I'm pretty sure that's how it's classified and marketed. The headspace I found myself in while reading this was more of how I approach reading magical realism books. And by that I mean there's like this very particular kind of headspace I go into when I pick up a magical realism novel, and it's like kind of just accepting things and not focusing too much on explanations, you know, on why things are the way they are, or kind of the details of this setting, how we got to this point in the world, or things like that. So not that this book wasn't well developed, because I personally think it really was, but I do think that viewing this one as more of a kind of looser, not dreamlike world, but less defined world and setting, I think that really helped my enjoyment of it. So if you can kind of like turn that switch in your head, I think that could really help you enjoy this book more as well. And I think going into this novel, or kind of continuing to read this novel with that in mind, this like, okay, we're probably not going to get all of the answers that we might in like an urban fantasy or a science fiction or something like that, or even like a traditional fantasy. I think that really helped my enjoyment of it. Okay, so now we're going to get into actually my review of this book and what I thought about it. So we follow our main character, Sela, and she lives in kind of this principality of this region called Potomac, and it is in what was known as the United States, but that's not really what has happened. This is basically like an alternate history about if other colonies had rebelled against Britain first, and kind of how that affected all of their colonies, including the American colonies, and they broke up into smaller kind of, they almost feel like city-states, I think. And so Sela is the daughter of the ruler of one of these, named Potomac, and she's supposed to get married to kind of solidify her succession, I guess you could say, and she has this public proposal that she makes, because that's how it's done, and she gets turned down. And amidst all this humiliation and embarrassment, her stepmother and her counselors kind of decide to send her on this quest across the ocean. She's going to make multiple stops, and it's basically like the most intense, high-stakes speed dating you've ever read about, because she has 2 weeks to secure a proposal from, like, I think four different men, and at the end of her trip she's going to make a decision about who she wants to accept as her consort. Now Sela really doesn't want to go on this trip, she doesn't want to leave her homeland, and she doesn't really trust her stepmother, but she ends up going because of all of these political reasons that sort of force her into it. And that's kind of how we start the book. The majority of this book is Sela on the first couple of legs of this journey. So as you can probably infer from that synopsis, this is a very romance-heavy book. It's very centered around romantic relationships. And so if that's not your thing, if that's like your least favorite part of books you read, if you tend to avoid romance at all costs, this book is probably not for you. But I will say I am kind of iffy on that. Like, I tend to like romantic subplots rather than entire stories being built around a romantic relationship. So I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that aspect, but I ended up really enjoying it, because I feel like the way Anna Bright uses romantic relationships is really clever. Like, I feel like this book is really an exploration of agency for women, especially in situations where they don't usually have it. Because sometimes, due to the position you are in, you can't necessarily break down the entire system before you have to do something. And I really like the way that Sela's character and her romantic entanglements are kind of used to explore that. And to me, this is a book about making choices and finding agency even when other people are limiting your options. Kind of how you can work within the confines of these systems. And I thought that was really well explored. I found that really interesting. And I also found the focus on romance to be very believable, because this is pretty much Sela's entire job, is to fall in love with these guys. And it's really interesting seeing her grapple with that, like know that she should be flirting with them. She should be making herself open to falling in love with these guys, because the future of her country or of her homeland really depends on it. So it's really interesting seeing that clash with her own feelings, and her try to figure out if what she's feeling is real or if it's just a result of how desperate she is. And I found that really interesting and really clever. And going along with that, there were a couple of romantic tropes or situations that I think are often kind of excused in romantic subplots. And one of them in particular was handled in a way I thought was so mature and so interesting and something I have always wanted to see done. I won't give away what that is, but I really loved that aspect of the book, and that was one of my favorite scenes, honestly. There are three sort of romantic possibilities in this book, and I will say that one of the three I felt was kind of unnecessary. I would have liked it better if that were just a friendship. I think that would have been a much stronger relationship, but it didn't like take over the book too much. There wasn't that much time spent on it, and it didn't bother me unduly, but that is something to note. I also found it really impressive that within this 2-week span, the relationships felt pretty believable. It wasn't even like insta-love, because the entire time these characters are aware that they are being forced into the situation, so it didn't feel unrealistic in that way, and like you do have kind of the heightened emotions of having such a short time frame and having such a strong motivation for why these characters should or shouldn't end up together. And then talking about Sela herself, I really enjoyed her. Right from the beginning, I really felt for her. Every step of the way, I really felt myself understanding her emotions, and even when she responded in ways that I wouldn't, I understood so clearly why she did the things she did, and the fact that she was making what she believed to be the best choice at the time. I just found her really strong in this very quiet way, and she is still willing to stand up for herself. There's this really amazing moment where she shuts down somebody who is trying to shame her for eating food, which is ridiculous, but that was just such a satisfying moment, and I really liked seeing those throughout the book. I really liked seeing Sela come into her own, and she is very young. I think she's like 16 in this book, and so she does struggle a little bit with who she is and what the right thing to do is, and she's kind of been set adrift on this very high pressure journey with not as much guidance as she should have had. And I really liked seeing how that affected her, because I think Anna Bright did a fantastic job of balancing how believably vulnerable she felt at times with also being really strong and really capable, and like she has been raised to do this kind of thing, but she wasn't expected to do it this early, and I think that balance was done really well. As far as the other characters went, I really enjoyed some of the side characters as well. Like there were a couple in particular near the end of the book that are part of this one family, and I loved all of their interactions so much. It was just so much fun to spend time with them, and I was so impressed with how clear of a picture I got of their family and their interactions and how they felt about each other, how they had grown up. Like, even though Sela is only staying there for 2 weeks and you as the reader don't have a huge novel to get to know them, I felt like I knew them pretty well, and that was really, really enjoyable. The only caveat I have about the characters is I really would have liked there to be more women in this book, especially because Sela is such a strong woman herself, and she definitely does have connections with women back home, like her godmother in particular. I really liked the little bit of their relationship that we saw, but due to the nature of the story, we don't spend a lot of time on that, which I understand, but it just would have been nice to see more bonds between girls. There is one female character on her crew that I really liked, and I hope we get to see more of her in the sequel. And there definitely were other women that Sela interacted with that I did enjoy, but I just would have liked a stronger focus on that. So now moving into the writing and the overall like structure or themes of the story, I really loved the writing style. I thought it was really lovely and descriptive, but not overwrought. I didn't find myself just zoning out while we described this like beautiful mansion or whatever. I feel like the author gave us the amount of information we needed to get a feeling for this location or for what was going on at the time, but didn't kind of belabor the point. And something I mentioned at the very beginning of this video is kind of the vagueness of the setting. And vagueness is the wrong word, because we do have a very clear sense of where we are in this book and the various locations that Sela stops at. But the part that wasn't explained as much was exactly how we got to this place. Like, I don't necessarily understand where all of these areas are located or what real world country they correspond to, but that didn't bother me, because to me, like, that wasn't really the point of the story, and this sort of like soft focus, almost fairy tale setting, to me that really fit with the story, because one of the themes or the elements that I saw repeated a lot in this book was the importance of storytelling, and fairy tales in particular, and how these stories are still important. Like, they might not be true, but they have important things to say about the world or about human nature. And I just really liked how important stories were to Sela and to this world. And for that reason, I think the somewhat undefined boundaries of this world really worked for me, and it didn't bother me. Now, if you like to read a book and know exactly why everything happened the way it did, this one might not be for you, but if you can kind of suspend that a little bit, I think the setting could be really enjoyable. So overall, I really enjoyed The Beholder. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I'm really excited for the official release of this book and definitely for the sequel when that comes out in the next year or so. I don't know. I'm just really intrigued and excited by how we left off with this one. I'm really excited to continue following Sela's journey, and I'm intrigued by the villain or the antagonist that is getting set up in the next book, like this region of the Imperia, and I'm curious as to what that setting is going to be like, if it's going to be as bad as Sela thinks it is or not. So I'm really looking forward to the sequel. So let me know if you guys have read The Beholder, what you thought of it, or if you're planning to pick it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!